Chiggy, buckle up. I'm going to say something wild and I mean it from my soul, okay? And until you can come with something scientifically to shoot this down, this is theory that we are running with. The Eve gene, the Amazon women, the Virgin Mary, and Noah's Ark, they're all connected and they're like literally merging stories, and it's blown my mind. For any of this to make sense, we got to start with the stingrays and the sharks, okay? On 2 rare occasions, 2 females have been able to self-impregnate themselves. We call it parthenogenesis, okay? So, in my mind, if it can happen in nature to animals, it can happen in nature to humans because we are one and the same. What if it did happen and they knew it happened? And it didn't just happen to one person. The whole story of the Amazon tribe completely changed my mind. Like, I have to think about that different. What if the tribe of Amazon women literally didn't need men because they were all capable of parthenogenesis? Now think about this. Melanin. If melanin is properly generated with electricity, and they have proof that melanin can generate electricity on its own in the darkness, so it is an active being. If you mix that with the crystals, the jewels, the gems, the spiritual relics, all the things that they mark taboo, think about this. If parthenogenesis would simply be activating the testosterone within a body to create the chemical that would mix to create sperm to make an egg inside of a body, that is totally possible. And it's possible because we just saw it's possible in animals. Now that is where the story of Mary, the virgin birth, comes to not make sense. What if we had to cover up the Eve gene by creating the Virgin Mary? Because that's the story. That's where they want you to think Jesus came from. And then science told you the Eve gene, the mitochondrial gene, is the origin of life. Now we still have to ask, where did Eve come from? That's not why we're here. If Eve was capable of perpetuating her own children, let's pretend that Noah's Ark wasn't about Noah and his sons. It was about taking Eve and her children. And not just any children. The firstborn daughter and the firstborn son. Those would have been the most 2 powerful genetic combinational ties to Eve. Now this is going to get really weird and wild. Now let's pretend that Eve and her children were having children, okay? And then when you do that, you inbreed. What is albinism? Albinism is the result of genetically inbreeding too close. Now to ask a question further, where do white people come from? And listen, I don't mean this to be weird, we're talking scientifically. Well, if in the Bible, like they said, those with albinism were cast to a place, if those people went to a cave and bred with each other, if a mutation mutated with itself, what could that then create? White people, I'm sorry, are level 2 albinos. You have active melanin sites, therefore you have not been mutated. Would 2 albinos, 2 recessive genes produce another recessive gene, or is it possible 2 albinos could produce a normal child? A normal child? Yes. Is it possible for that baby to be black? Yes. But if you've been in a cave where your melanin sites are not activated, what's the most logical outcome? The production of those who came from the Caucasus Mountain. Now, if those people broke back out and went to all the lands where they were melanated people, kings and queens, and they started something that looked like the Christian Crusades, now that makes sense. That makes sense of the origins of life. I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe just to me. But then back to Noah's Ark. So the covenant, we all agreed when we came out of here, we would conquer places. We would leave our own descendants in places. And when you leave a lighter descendant and you mix that with a darker descendant, you will get descendants that over time become lighter and lighter and lighter. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this rudely. I proved to you that the buffalo came from Africa or Asia. If buffalo came from Africa or Asia, that would mean that those people had to be originally black because that's 200,000 years ago. Proved to you that Austria, the Aboriginals. And I told you the other day, that's crazy to me. We didn't ship all those people from Africa to America. Where are the slave ships? So if America was black already, that means we have POWs in America, and there's still ongoing wars from the Christian Crusades across the world. Why does France still have 14 colonies in Africa under their control? Another part of this, I want it to all tie in. Antarctica is it all. That is the Garden of Eden. 2/3 of the freshest water there. And you guys, Antarctica is truly a tropical rainforest. Antarctica is truly a tropical rainforest. And we have a story about Amazon women, the story of the Eve gene, the story of Mary, the story of Noah's Ark, the Caucasus Mountains for some reason, and Tartaria mixed in there. I think it might be time to start really questioning science and step away from the Bible. Because I feel like they're using their Bible to cover up stories so they can remember the stories and how they go. And here comes science, letting the truth out. Because again, think about it. Sky Daddy impregnating Mary or the Eve gene going through Parthenogenesis. Y'all, this got long, so I'm going to make a part 2 because we're going to have to talk about how Parthenogenesis was possible and why our relics in the Vatican are so important. If everything was about frequency and high vibrations and they removed us from our soil and our crystals and our gems that connect us to our soil, that was how they stopped us from self or Parthenogenesis. Don't forget the crystal drip was the pineal gland, and then every month your pineal gland drips almost simultaneously with your cycle. That's your goal.